Seneca knew these truths 2,000 years ago, and it terrifies modern society. Now get ready as we reveal these truths. Imagine waking up tomorrow knowing that nothing can disturb your peace anymore. Not criticism, not loss, not fear, not even death itself. Because 2,000 years ago, a Roman philosopher figured out how to make the human mind untouchable, and his words are so dangerous to modern society that they're rarely taught the way they were meant to be. Today, we're diving into Seneca's deepest wisdom, ideas that strip away illusion, destroy anxiety at its root, and teach you how to live with unshakable calm in a chaotic world. In a world obsessed with speed, noise, validation, and endless stimulation, the words of Seneca land like a quiet thunder, not loud, not flashy, but so deeply unsettling that they force you to stop and confront your own life. Because Seneca was not writing philosophy to impress scholars. He was writing to save the human soul from wasting itself, and his teachings feel even more dangerous today than they did 2,000 years ago, because they expose the illusion that most people are living inside without realizing it. Seneca believed that the greatest tragedy was not death, poverty, or misfortune, but living without awareness, drifting through life enslaved by fear, desire, and the opinions of others. And if there is one lesson that defines his philosophy, it is this: most people die long before their bodies ever stop breathing. Seneca repeatedly warned that life is not short, it only feels short to those who waste it. And this single idea alone destroys the modern obsession with busyness, productivity hacks, and external success. Because Seneca was not concerned with how much you do, but with how consciously you live. And he believed that a person who is constantly rushing, chasing, reacting, and worrying is not alive, but scattered, fragmented, and internally enslaved. He saw time as the most precious possession a human being could ever have, yet paradoxically, the one people give away most freely, trading their days for distractions, social approval, meaningless ambitions, and endless comparison. And Seneca observed that people guard their money fiercely while allowing strangers, employers, trends, and expectations to steal their time without resistance. And he considered this a form of quiet suicide. According to Seneca, every moment you spend anxious about the future or resentful of the past is a moment stolen from your life, because the present is the only place where existence actually happens, and yet most people never truly arrive there. He warned that postponing life is the most dangerous delay of all, because tomorrow is promised to no one, and the mind that constantly says later is the mind that never truly lives. Seneca's Stoicism was not about emotional suppression, nor was it about becoming cold or indifferent. It was about emotional mastery, about reclaiming sovereignty over your inner world so that external chaos could no longer dominate your peace. And he believed that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them, a teaching that echoes powerfully in modern psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness practices today. When Seneca spoke about fear, he did not deny its presence, but he stripped it of its power by exposing its illusion, reminding us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and that the mind is capable of creating horrors far greater than anything fate could ever deliver. One of Seneca's most radical teachings was his relationship with adversity, because while modern culture treats discomfort as something to be avoided at all costs, Seneca saw voluntary hardship as a form of training for the soul, believing that a person who never practices discomfort becomes fragile, dependent, and terrified when life inevitably becomes difficult. He encouraged occasional exposure to simplicity, hunger, cold, and discomfort, not as punishment, but as preparation, because he understood that fear loses its grip when you face it deliberately, and that the person who has learned to endure little has already conquered much. This philosophy stands in direct opposition to modern luxury culture, where convenience is mistaken for happiness and comfort is confused with fulfillment. Yet Seneca warned that luxury weakens the spirit, making even small inconveniences feel unbearable. Seneca also had a ruthless clarity about wealth and status, acknowledging that money itself is not evil, but attachment to it is, because anything you cannot lose without panic has already become your master. He observed that many people are not wealthy, but owned by their possessions, and that chasing status often leads not to freedom, but to deeper anxiety, because status must be constantly defended, compared, and validated by others. True wealth, according to Seneca, is not having much, but needing little, and this idea strikes at the heart of consumer culture, where identity is built on accumulation rather than character. Seneca believed that a person who depends on external things for happiness has already surrendered their freedom, because what can be taken away can never provide true security. Perhaps one of Seneca's most misunderstood teachings is his contemplation of death, which modern audiences often mistake as morbid. Yet for Seneca, reflecting on death was the ultimate tool for liberation. He believed that remembering death sharpened life, stripped away trivial concerns, and revealed what truly mattered. Because when you remember that every conversation could be your last, every sunrise your final one, and every breath a gift rather than a guarantee, you stop living carelessly and start living deliberately. Seneca did not fear death. He feared living without purpose, without presence, and without dignity. And he believed that death was not something to be avoided mentally, but something to be integrated wisely into one's understanding of existence. Seneca also placed enormous emphasis on self-examination, urging people to reflect daily on their actions, thoughts, and reactions, not to shame themselves, but to refine their character, because he believed that progress begins with honest self-awareness. He famously practiced reviewing his day each night, asking himself what he did well, where he failed, and how he could improve, a practice that modern self-development culture often repackages without realizing its ancient Stoic roots. For Seneca, philosophy was not something you read once and admire. It was something you lived daily, something that shaped your decisions, relationships, and reactions under pressure. One of the most powerful elements of Seneca's philosophy is his understanding of human relationships, where he warned against dependency, emotional manipulation, and the desperate need for approval, reminding us that placing our happiness in the hands of others is the fastest way to lose ourselves. He believed friendship should be rooted in virtue, not utility or validation, and that true companionship strengthens character rather than exploits weakness. Seneca understood human nature deeply, recognizing how easily people become enslaved by flattery, praise, and the desire to be liked, and he warned that living for applause leads to inner emptiness, because the crowd is fickle and approval is never permanent. At the core of Seneca's Stoic wisdom is the idea of inner freedom, the ability to remain calm, grounded, and dignified regardless of external circumstances, and he believed that the strongest person is not the one who dominates others, but the one who governs themselves. This idea is revolutionary in an age obsessed with power, dominance, and control, because Seneca teaches that true power is internal, invisible, and unshakable. He believed that no tyrant, no misfortune, no loss could truly harm a person who had mastered their own mind, because while fate controls events, it does not control interpretation, response, or character. Seneca did not promise an easy life. He promised a meaningful one, and he understood that wisdom does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from turning into despair. His teachings remind us that life will always include uncertainty, loss, and struggle, but suffering becomes unbearable only when we resist reality instead of understanding it. He taught acceptance not as passivity, but as alignment with nature, recognizing what is within our control and releasing what is not. a lesson that remains one of the most powerful psychological tools available to the modern mind. In a world addicted to distraction, Seneca calls us back to stillness. In a culture obsessed with image, he calls us back to substance. In a society terrified of silence, he reminds us that wisdom speaks quietly but echoes forever. His philosophy does not offer escapism, but confrontation, forcing us to look honestly at how we live, what we value, and whether our lives are truly our own or merely reactions to external pressures. Seneca's teachings endure not because they are comforting, but because they are true, and truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. If you find yourself overwhelmed by modern life, exhausted by constant comparison, anxious about the future, or disconnected from meaning, Seneca's wisdom is not ancient history. It is a survival guide, a reminder that peace is not found by controlling the world, but by mastering yourself, and that the most powerful rebellion in a chaotic world is calm, clarity, and conscious living. And if you want more deep Stoic wisdom, timeless philosophy, and practical teachings to strengthen your mind and reclaim your inner freedom, subscribe to Stoic Gateway, where ancient philosophy meets modern life, and where wisdom is not just studied, but lived.